And good morning. It is time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And once again, he's been ready. You've been ready since last week, haven't you, Mike?
Oh, you can't imagine how ready I am. Another big, gigantic coffee silo. We've got co-host Miles Bauer with us, and we've got a guest in the studio with us this morning. Jeff Grieve, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Hey, I appreciate it. Listen, folks, just a little heads up as we get going. Ludwig von Wiedendorski is not available this morning, which means we're not streaming. Boy, we pounded him last night. Now I'm feeling guilty about it. He had to take his wife for some medical treatments, and listen, she deserves it. He doesn't, but she deserves it. So we're thinking about you, Gina. At any rate, at some point during the show, we're expecting to have Pete Hoekstra call in. In the meantime, Jeff, you're running for office.
I am. Yes.
What are you running for?
I'm running for Muskegon County prosecutor.
Okay, very, very nice. Now, in your what are you, a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian?
I'm a Libertarian, running as a Libertarian.
Okay. Well, you've got a slogan that I heard a little bit about.
No victim, no crime.
What does it mean?
I mean, I will not prosecute victimless crimes. So if you commit a crime, but nobody was harmed in the commission of that crime, I won't prosecute it.
So if someone broke into my gun shop and stole my guns from me, is that a victimless crime?
No, you are a victim.
A victim?
You are a victim. Your property was stolen.
Okay. So if I grew my own 3 pounds of marijuana and smoked it to the point where I have absolute no memory of what just happened 10 seconds ago in the IQ of a field mouse, is that victimless?
That is victimless.
Okay, so you're a proponent of the marijuana law proposals and all of that in Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How is that being received in Muskegon County?
I'm not sure. I mean, there's such a big spread. I've heard that the current prosecutor is very opposed to it. He is very in favor of all the drug laws, and so.
And you're not.
No.
I got to tell you, I wrestle with it, and Miles, our co-host, is probably hopping up and down right now. The difference between you and me, and please don't take this as disrespectful, but I've raised 4 daughters, and I had a different view before I raised my daughters than I did after. And so, listen, I don't think it is a victimless crime. That's where you and I differ.
Yeah.
When I talk to people, and in fact, my gun shop is fairly close to a medical marijuana facility, and when I watch the folks come and go, and by the way, they have a lot more pain on Thursday, Friday, Saturday than they do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like in the ×5 percentage. They have no future, and I don't mean this disrespectfully. Listen, they're driving junk cars. They've got their butt cracks showing. They're absolutely not going to be a lawyer.
And I agree, and that's a choice that they're making.
But
with
the problem
their
with
life.
it is that it affects the children that they're going to have. It affects the folks that have to support them, like me and Miles Bauer. And so I got to tell you, I push back on that a little bit. Honest, I do. And I tend to be a Jeffersonian. And I probably was closer to neutral until I got near that facility and watched what they're producing as an element of our society. And when I say that, I mean it very very respectfully to you. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but the folks that I'm seeing by far and large cannot support themselves. And so when you say that they're doing it to themselves, they're doing it to society, because society has to support them. Miles Bauer, am I off in the ditch on this?
No, I can. I mean, it's something that I think each state is going to have to wrestle with, sooner or later. And I mean, it is simply an idea that we as a country are going to have to work through, like many other.
When I look at the stats in Colorado that they're starting to generate with accident rates and how it's impacting neighboring states that prefer not, I think it's alarming. I do. I get the as a Jeffersonian, I get the rationale to want to embrace it. What would they say? George Washington had his own garden, if you will. But he wasn't driving a car, and he was probably the richest man in America at the time. And so you weigh these things out. There is an impact on society. There can be no question about that.
There is, but there's an impact on society from alcohol use, from cigarette use, from all of these other elements.
Yeah, maybe. But listen, when you take cigarettes, I smoked for 40 years. I quit about 6.5 years ago. I don't know that my smoking impacted your wallet. I don't believe it did. And by the way, there's been absolutely no documentation. Right now, there's people yelling at the radio, the Nazi non-smoker people who are advocates for marijuana. And I go, how can that be? I saw a study once that said one joint is equal to a pack of Marlboros. And I go, oh, wait a minute. It's true, by the way. Okay. You can't win the debate, and I'm not. So I say to myself,
equal in what way you mean?
And harming to your lungs. Harming to your lungs. And the non-smokers, the anti-Nazi non-smokers, I hate the smell. Keep it away from me, because you're forcing me into that secondhand circumstance. It's their right to be that way, and it's okay. And at the time, by the way, when they were coming through with these laws, when it first started on the smoking side, Miles and I owned a restaurant together. It was right at the beginning of this war over the smoking issue. And my position then was, if my entire financial world is rested on this restaurant, it is none of your business if I want to make it look like a big, gigantic blue cloud. The market will say we're not going there because your joint stinks. Now, as I developed politically, then my philosophy became about cigarette smoking, that perhaps the state of Michigan should look at it like they would, say, alcohol. So an example is this Grand Haven, Michigan. At the time, there were 7 restaurants. And of the 7 restaurants, 2 of them allowed smoking. The rest had made a business decision not to have smoking before the laws, and before we became a non-smoking state. We have not, by the way, and the numbers haven't changed. And when they come up with those numbers, they're lies. But that's for another show. The point that I'm making is that when we make these comparisons, and I start watching the folks that are on both sides, man, the lines get really blurry about who's on what side of this. I've come down at it this way. I raised 4 daughters. And I don't want some dopehead selling them a bunch of junk with stuff mixed in it that I don't know what it is. And now I'm worse than I was raising 4 daughters because I've got 9 grandkids. And I wouldn't want to say, I'll take you out and sound really aggressive. But listen, harm my grandkids and you're not going to like me.
Yeah. And I can see that from your perspective.
He says that because I got a big gray beard and all that.
That's right. But from my perspective, it's a matter of justice. And you don't want to pay for these people. You're going to pay for these people whether you like it or not. You don't want these unsafe drugs on the streets. Then have them sold, and stores have them regulated in a more meaningful manner. Have your grandchildren who are going to have access to this anyways. Buy it from a pharmacy.
The difference between when you say that to me, now you get my Jeffersonianism to kick in, because I have absolutely zero faith in our government to regulate anything with any ounce of common sense. So when you say, good, let's rub our hands together, we're going to tax it and regulate it and make it pure, I have not come in contact with a government agency that could find us butt in the dark with 2 hands and 10 helpers.
But you want us to enforce it somehow. You want this to be enforced, and you want people to be locked up in jail for this, and you want all of this other stuff that the government is doing, and the government is going to have to do, and if you don't want it on the streets.
I got a bigger question, because I think all of this argument for my entire adult life has been on the wrong end of the stick. Honest, I do. This whole idea about legalizing it and all of that, and in the war over the Mexican border as it relates to drugs, and the war on drugs with Ronald Reagan. I was a big Reaganite, by the way. But all of that, from that point forward, asks the wrong question. And the real question in my mind is, why in the heck would someone want to burn their brain out with this nonsense? What kind of, and until we ask why, as long as there's a market, by the way, they're going to be a supplier. Whether we make it the state of Michigan, which I profoundly do not believe that the state of Michigan should be in the dope business. No more than, by the way, no more than I think they ought to be selling lottery tickets to poor people. I think shame on them. They ought to have their face slapped. You go to any gas station in the state of Michigan, and you're standing in line behind 4 or 5 people that absolutely cannot make it from check to check, and they're on a hope and a prayer spending $20 to the state of Michigan for lottery. And I think, really? That's what we're doing? And it's the same thing. So do I want the state of Michigan in the marijuana business? Absolutely not, because they can't barely be in the government business and control themselves. They've got a budget significantly greater than common sense says the average any per citizen should have. Miles, what are you beating up?
No, it's my wife's walking across the floor.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay, you got a wonderful floor. So listen, tell me where I'm wrong, Jeff.
Well, again, from my perspective, from a justice perspective, state can regulate it, not regulate it. That's what the state would do. From a prosecutor perspective, if it's a crime and nobody is hurt, if they don't individually hurt you, yes, society might be hurt or whatever, I'm not going to prosecute it. So that's my stance.
Are you a Hillary Clinton fan?
Not a big fan, no.
No. The reason I'm asking it that way, because I'm still debating it a little bit. Friendly, by the way. Please understand, very friendly. But one of the problems that most Jeffersonians that I know have with the government is that the government picks and chooses which laws they want to enforce. President Obama, I have found absolutely disgusting as it relates to which laws he wants to execute as the chief executive of the United States of America. He doesn't like this law, you're going to ignore it. I love that law. I love that law a lot. I'm going to beat you up with that law. I'm going to financially destroy you with that law. But this law over here, I don't like, so I'm not going to bother with it. I think it's a slippery slope. The reason we have a legislative body in the state of Michigan and in the federal government is so that we, the people, government that governs best, governs closest to the people, not closest to the prosecutor, not closest to the president, closest to the people. And I tell you it that way because I don't think that the prosecutor, you or the current prosecutor or any of the executive branch should have as part of their job description the freedom to figure out which law they're going to enforce or not.
Well, part of the discretionary purpose of that is because there's too many laws already, right? It's a felony to commit, adultery. Should we start prosecuting adultery?
No, but what we should do is campaign to cause our legislature to change, to omit, to revoke, to undo those silly laws. Riding around in my car with my shoes off, we've all seen the endless book of silly laws, but we don't just ignore them.
You just said we should enforce them.
But
you have to enforce them. We have to pull people over, take them out of their car, bring them to jail.
What we need to do is hold our legislators accountable and say, how can you sit there on this big stack of laws and create more? So what I'm telling you is I believe what I said. I don't think that we should have been in a position to just ignore laws. We should be out campaigning to get rid of those laws, not ignoring them. And maybe it would demonstrate how silly they are if we enforced them for a while.
And that would be
what do you think?
A great theoretical task to do to try to get our legislators to do anything like that.
Listen, I don't.
But our prosecutors and people in this position who are closest to the people have the option to say, I'm not going to enforce these laws that somebody from Detroit or for somebody on the other side of the state or who have enforced or trying to force on you. I'm not going to, and it's arbitrary.
It is arbitrary.
All of the laws are,
these
victimless laws are arbitrary because they can be enforced at any
To me, that's
point.
fearsome. It really is.
So if a police officer, that's one of, if a police officer wants to pull over someone who's going 85 miles per hour, or they see someone who's going 75 miles per hour, I think it'll be easier to catch this guy. I'm going to go get this guy, and it's completely arbitrary. It's completely up to their discretion on whether or not they're going to enforce the laws, and they have to pick and choose which ones they're going to do. And the same thing with a prosecutor, because we are limited in our resources. And a prosecutor, one of the big problems that has happened is because of plea deals, and so we have to make all these pleas to limit the amount of time that we're going to send people who have actually harmed people to jail because we have all of these people in jail for victimless crimes, and they're just taking up space.
I think where we left off is that I'm not convinced that they're victimless.
Mm-hmm.
Miles, what say you?
Well, it seems a little arbitrary that if, the legislatures have gone to the point of creating a law and, we have a prosecutor now that's saying, well, some of these laws, we really need to start dedicating time to. Other laws may not be as important. That seems like a slippery slope.
That's what we do now.
That could vary by almost county.
Well, I think things like, and this partly goes to Jeff's point, by the way, in the state of Michigan, I'll use CPLs as an example, which is concealed pistol licenses, folks. And so an example, we've just changed this law, by the way. What was taking place is that, let me give you an example. I live in Ottawa County. I have some son-in-laws that lived at the time in Muskegon County. So the 3 of my 4 son-in-laws and I went to the concealed carry class. We all 4 of us applied for our CPL the same day, which was the immediate day after the carry class. It took me almost 5 months to get my license from Ottawa County. And keeping in mind, I already held a federal firearms license. And it took them 3 weeks. You go, wait a minute. But here's what happened. And it kind of goes to my point, maybe, and to Miles's also. What happened is a lot of people across the state of Michigan said, no, you are not dispensing that law with blind justice in mind. You're letting all of these political hacks across the state on a county-by-county basis make these things, because if they don't like guns, there you are getting line, and if they don't care, here's your license willy-nilly, from one extreme to the other in the different 84 states or counties in the state. So, man, I push back a little bit when laws are allowed to be on a county-by-county basis that way, at least state laws of significance. And part of it, we can use the Colorado example. So let's say Muskegon decided to be a have at it with your marijuana county, in Ottawa said absolutely not. What goes on in Muskegon will absolutely impact what goes on in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So it's
the same thing would happen with Indiana or Ohio. Let's say Indiana or Ohio were to do it.
And it does, just like Colorado and just like California, by the way, spills over into its neighbors, at least the southern half of California that should have seceded. Maybe they did secede, I'm not sure. It was the land of fruits and nuts out there. But at any rate, it's a tough argument. It really is, because there's validity on both sides of it. I would have agreed with you when I was your age. I would have been passionately on your side, by the way. And by the way, I'm not a dope smoker. Tried it, did inhale when I was back in teenage years. I don't have a personal thing against it.
I've never done it, so I
don't have a personal thing against it, except for the folks that I have known, including relatives that have spent a lifetime smoking it, that are dumber than your glass of water, and I mean that with heart, by the way, because I've watched what it's done to their memory capacity. Their immediate, it's a scary thing. And I'll have people, oh no, Mike, it's a harmless thing. Well, no, it's really not.
Criminalizing him hasn't helped them.
No,
there are mental health.
Would you be, if there was a campaign, if there were a campaign engaged that would try to seek the greater issue of why, would that be something you'd embrace?
Of what?
Why do people do that? Why would a person knowingly, wantingly destroy their own brain? I'm free to destroy my brain, so I think I will. That to me is the epitome of ignorance.
I do not know. Right? I can't say why do people do a lot of the things they do. Why are people voting for Hillary Clinton? I have no idea why people would.
He got me on that one, Miles. I have no idea. Listen, do you have a website?
I do.
What's the website so folks know how to find you?
No Victim,
especially the folks that disagree with me and that agree with you, all jokes aside.
NoVictimNoCrime.net.
Very, very nice. Listen, Jeff, you're welcome to stay as we go through the show.
Okay.
But we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, Miles and I are going to kick around what happened in the debate and what's to come. So, folks, we'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mike Hewitt Show on News Talk 1090 WKBZ and Talk 1230 WTKG.
Renegade River, guns and ammo, and so much more. Old-fashioned service with surprisingly low prices. On M104 at the top of the new 231 bypass in Utica. Or find us at renegaderiver.com, because you deserve it.
Now, back to the Mike Hewitt Show on News Talk 1090 WKBZ and Talk 1230 WTKG.
And the Mike Hewitt Show is brought to you by renegaderiver.com as we fly through and land on segment number 2.
Wow, that was a tough landing, too, I'm telling you, folks. Listen, we would be remiss being a little bit of a political show, not to mention the debate that just went by. And one of the advantages that we have is that the extra days went by. And at one point I feared, is it going to be stale if we bring it up? But the other thing is that the extra time gives us the opportunity to actually dial in and get get beyond the knee-jerk reactions that the media and a lot of folks employed. And so when I look at the debate now with clear eyes a couple days after the fact, and you know, of course, everyone's first off is stuck with who won. But the very first thing I want to touch on is that I don't think anybody lost, because I don't know that Hillary lost any supporters. I don't think that Trump lost any supporters. I don't know that either one of them picked up any supporters. But that said, it was a necessary step to get beyond, although I think the second and the third debates, probably especially the third debate, will be explosive. But Miles, what was your vantage? How do you see the debate?
Well, I got to tell you, the build-up to it was kind of like watching the Super Bowl. And so I was there, I was watching it, and then it did not seem like 90 minutes long. It seemed like it was over in a flash. And I kind of walked away, depressed, downhearted, and I went off to bed that night disappointed. And I woke up the next morning, and everywhere in the internet, there's just story after story as to how Trump did so well. And I almost thought I was in the Twilight Zone. I couldn't believe the world I was in. I mean, it was like something else happened, and I completely missed it.
It was. So, go ahead.
And so, the more I started reading through various different articles, various different sources, that was when I texted you yesterday. And fortunately, it was several minutes before Rush came on the air, and I was actually stunned that Rush reiterated my theory. And I think really what happened is, the folks like you and I, that kind of daily follow politics and everything going on. I think either we are so soaked in political, in the political world, or we just wanted Trump to just knock her out and be done with this. And so when that didn't happen, you and I, like, we were texting back and forth. We were kind of like, wow, is this like a draw, or did he lose? And yet, while I was sitting there watching it, my wife, who's a never Trumper,
nice,
turns to me at the very end of the debate, and she goes, Trump won that debate. And I literally had to pick myself up off the floor when she said that.
Yeah.
Joy has never said anything positive about Trump.
That's where you say, Joy, you're cut off. You no more drinking tonight.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, for me, I think the difference was, and we talked about this, folks, in between segments. For me, I think the difference was, it reminded me a little bit of the JFK-Nixon thing, although maybe a little bit more flamboyant. But for those, first off, I agree with you, Miles. The policy wonks, the political monkeys, as I've called us, that are dialed into this all the time, probably had some certain expectations, and that didn't necessarily come to pass. But I do notice a difference between how even I viewed the debate between when I watched it versus when I heard it. When I watched Hillary Clinton with the smugness and really fake smiles and the endless rehearsed comments. On one hand, I went, wow, is she really... I had to separate it all a little bit. On one hand, I wanted to think she's very smooth, and he isn't. And then when I started watching how she appeared and tried to plug my ears and just watch her mannerisms and her poise, and I was revolted by it, frankly. I really was. And by the way, just so everyone knows, I felt that way about Trump often during the primary debates because of the facial expressions and how he would purse his lips and flip his head. I don't like those kind of antics in a debate. But in this debate, he didn't do it, and she did. Her approach seemed to be, if you don't like me, you're ignorant. And I thought, well, I don't think I'm ignorant, and I don't like you, and I like you less now. But to your point, when I started looking at the online things, and by the way, I hold myself back a little bit because I remember watching Ron Paul's online excitement. He generated a lot of online activity that didn't materialize in the form of votes. So, I mean, that was a lesson for folks that have been paying attention for a while to say, don't let straw polls, don't let these things gin you up because they're not the electorate. And yet, when I look, I mean, I heard a poll on the way in this morning from one of the sister stations talking about a 51% believe that Trump won. And I think, no, I felt like he held back a little bit. And I even found myself rationalizing, why would he hold back? And I've come to believe my own little theory is that he's an old-fashioned guy. Forget what people say about him. Somebody at 70 years old has been taught that you don't go out and beat up on a 70-year-old lady. And I think he held back a little bit for fear of, out of that subliminal psychology going on, but also politically for fear that if he went out there and just bludgeoned her politically, that there'd be fallout for him treating her poorly. I think he held back. So what do you think?
I didn't think it was even holding back. I was entertained the entire time. I thought it was a...
And I've heard people that said I was bored. It was terrible.
I thought it was fun. Like the little jabs. I thought that he kept just jabbing her and just trying to get her, because it's come across that she is just not a nice person. People just say that she is not the nicest person in the world. And I think he knows that, and I think he just kind of wanted her to go off. I was impressed with her being able to hold herself back.
Right.
There are times you could see where she just was kind of clenching and like, I'm going to say something. But I was entertained. I thought it was fun. I think the best line of the night was when she said, he doesn't pay a penny in federal income tax, and he said, that's because I'm smart.
Yeah, but he's going to get beat up for that truism. But the irony to that is that the folks in Washington, D.C. especially, but even in Lansing, that come up with these outrageous tax policies never pay themselves. They're never the actual persons that pay. Mm-hmm. And so it's no different than if I'd have been him. It's always easy to say that because you get the 20/20 hindsight, and, if only he'd have said X, Y, Z. Yeah. But I would have said, wait a minute, can we talk about the 5.7% of the billions of dollars you've got from countries like Saudi Arabia that kill gay people and keep their women locked in the closet? There's just not an even scale to this. He used the laws to not have to pay tax. She used the laws to make herself grossly rich by taking money from countries that absolutely don't believe in any of the rhetoric she's espousing to, which causes me to say, I don't think she believes it either.
Yeah.
So, what do you think, Miles?
Yeah, I was going to say, that although I think in my own mind that it was very likely a draw, I do think that the one caveat I would put around draw is I think, and you guys might disagree with me, as I am a Trump-publican, but
us disagree with you, Miles? Nah.
I do think that he dispels or begins that journey of dispelling that he doesn't have a temperament to be a president. He wouldn't take the president, or he wouldn't take the presidency seriously. I think he begins now to put that to bed. So I do think that is the one positive that he does definitely take away from that.
I agree with you. And by the way, on that point, that may be one of the things, that exact concern may be one of the things that caused him not to do all the things that I would have loved to have seen him do, because the people would have said, there he goes. He's not being very temperamental. He's being disrespectful. He's being, all of the words that they love to attach to him. I think he was darned if he did and darned if he didn't. If he would have taken on a more aggressive stance like us talk show hosts would have liked him, they would have wanted to tar and feather him and drag him off the stage with a big cane. You're being disrespectful to this lady who's a criminal and probably a murderer. Did I say that? So I mean, there's such different ways of drilling into this. Now listen, there's another take that I wanted to share with everybody. I had a number of people, more than 10, so I'm probably approaching a dozen different people I talked to over the last couple of days that were excited that the debate was over when it was over, because it made them feel uncomfortable and anxious with people picking on each other, and the confrontation setting made them feel very uncomfortable. Yeah, true.
Wow.
Jeff's giving me the face like, wow. But listen, Jeff, have you been in a debate like that, a candidate debate?
No, just right now. When
he said, yeah, I just did, thanks. Miles, have you been in a debate like that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I asked that question because I've been in a few. Recently over guns. I had two very anti-gun people. They wanted to repeal the Second Amendment and come confiscate I said, yeah, start with mine, please. And that was threatening. I didn't mean it threatening. I was just making an offer. So the point is that when you're on the spot and you know that half the room hates your guts, it's I don't care who you are, it's a very intimidating thing. I speak a lot. I do the show, so I'm not exactly a weeping willow here, but it's very intimidating to someone like me, and I don't care who Trump is. It has to be intimidating to him, knowing that you're going to get millions upon millions of people around the world watching. Same thing. Some of them hate you. Some of them are cheering for every mistake you might make, or anything that might be perceived or could be colored as a mistake. It's intimidating. And when you compare that, his first real one-on-one debate, to a lady that's been a U.S. senator, she's I don't give her a lot of credit for experience, but only from the candidate level. She's been a candidate. She has certainly helped Bill through his, what was that, bimbo explosion? I think that's what she called it. So she's
eruption?
Yeah, bimbo eruption, I think is what she said the words were. And it's important, by the way, on that point, that when listeners that support her right now and they're yelling at the radio about me, those are her words. And whether Obama was a citizen or not, that was her rumor. And it goes to what a masterful machine the Clinton machine is when it can spin these things off and make it look like he's disrespectful to women when she's talking about trailer trash and bimbo eruptions and using the N-word like it was, is, and was, and she's got a physically violent a temper, according to state police and Secret Service, and you go, wait, and you think he's not stable? Honest? Really? So I one of the things that, and by the way, folks, remember, if you know me, I chair the 2nd District Republican Party, so yes, I'm a partisan. But when I say that, and I look at the reason that folks vote sometimes, I can't help but hearken back to George Washington's warning in his farewell letter, because they didn't do addresses back then. In his farewell letter, he said he cautioned America about getting into party politics to the point where folks would vote for what's better for the party than what's better for the country. And I look at people now, this lady's a criminal by any definition. She just is. When you look at the amount of folks that trust her, we're debating about whether he called someone who was supposed to stay thin because she's an international model that he has to be responsible and pay for, whether he made obnoxious comments to her or not. We're contrasting that to the things that the Clinton machine have done to folks. And you go, she's a criminal. This lady, they're having a conversation about on the debate about security of the nation. This lady directly placed the United States of America in peril by hiding her. It's laughable. It's disgusting that folks are so partisan that then they go ahead and say, yep, I like her anyhow. Or that's just how they all are. No, it isn't.
Here's one I heard the other day that was pretty good. They like Hillary Clinton because she's above the law. We need somebody in office because she can get things done and she can run all over people and she can break laws and she can do whatever she wants in order to get what she wants done. And that's why I support her. That's what I heard somebody say.
But listen, Stalin, and I'm not calling her Stalin, folks, don't get mad at me, but Stalin didn't have laws either. Hitler didn't have laws that he had to stay within the confines of. And these are a dangerous thing. I saw a poll where they were talking about a lot of folks, not just some, a lot of folks were in favor of a one-party system. I'm going, don't they teach anything in public school anymore? Who the heck would advocate for a one-party system? And I'm a partisan. I think what makes us great is lots of ideas in the arena of ideas. Mm-hmm. And if you just have a one-party system or someone that's above the law, I equate those two as the same. You have the Soviet Union. It's what you have. Yeah, Miles, what were you going to say?
No, I was agreeing that. I mean, we kind of designed everything to be adversarial for a reason.
Absolutely. Well, let's have those awkward moments, because that's what's going to lead us to the best ideas. That's how we've been able to, when we heard about the American exceptionalism, now we're arguing nowadays if we're exceptional or not. And by the way, you're a libertarian, at least in this run, and there's a lot of angst in the last 2 or 3 cycles about whether we should have a 3-party system. Well, a 3-party system, in my view, it's math when I say this, not ideology. If you actually had 3 people running, 2 of them are going to be closer than the third, and the third one's who's going to win. Mm-hmm. So I say 3 parties won't work just because of math. So then I ask the next obvious question: maybe we should have a multi-party system, a true multi-party system. But then I look to the countries that have a true multi-party system and say, do we want to trade our problems for theirs? And the answer is absolutely not. So listen, we're out of time for this segment. So we're gonna go away and come back and dive into the Enigma Report. Folks, we'll be right back.
This is the Mike Hewitt Show on News Talk 1090 WKBZ and West Michigan's Talk 1230 WTKG.
RenegadeRiver.com is new and used firearms. All priced to sell, plus ammo, reloading supplies, optics, clothing, lasers, and yes, tactical gear. RenegadeRiver.com, family owned right here in Michigan, because you deserve it.
3, 2, 1, 0.
This is Talk 1090 WKBZ and Talk 1230 WTKG.
And this is the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com.
You have arrived to your final destination on your journey through reality. Welcome to the Enigma Report.
So before I dive directly into the Enigma Report, we're talking off air. Maybe I should actually help some folks, if you're just listening to the show, understand what the Enigma is. It is, this little section of the show is things that are, but they make absolutely no sense to me. So they are, but you're going, why? I don't get it. Sometimes that happens. So today's Enigma, it's a fact, although it makes no sense, is that the media and the establishment, all of the talking heads across the spectrum from Fox to NBC and everyone in between, they don't get the draw to Trump yet. And when you listen to them review the debate, when you listen to them just give a nightly update, it's clear as a bell. They don't understand. They really don't get why folks are supporting him. And once upon a time when I was a Cruz supporter, I got it, but I get it a lot better now that Miles forced me to slow down and actually listen. So Miles, have you noticed, am I wrong? Do they not understand yet?
Oh, that's absolutely. It's, but I mean, it's really what created the whole Trump phenomenon is that chasm between the media elite and the intellectual elite of that whole Washington, New York corridor. And those of us in flyover country out here, the great unwashed. And that difference is so vast that's the reason why they don't understand why we have the response we do.
Right.
And we're just looking back at them like, are you really that far gone?
Listen, when we talked in the second segment about whether he won or whether he lost, and I said one of the comments I offered was that he was darned if he did or if he didn't. And part of how I want to make folks understand what I meant when I said that is that if he would have went out there on that stage and was filled with polished, overly rehearsed, fake smiles, mannerisms, and gestures that were clearly the result of someone standing in the mirror for 2 hours practicing them. Not that I'm saying again that that's what Hillary did, but a lot of the Trump supporters would have went, "Oh, don't do that, please don't ever do that again," because that's not what. And I'm on the Trump train, so I can now say I don't think that's what we want. We don't want another person that's been rehearsing this for 30 years finally on the stage going, "Here I am, aren't I wonderful? And do I look like Margaret Thatcher even though I've ragged on her for the last 30 years?" We don't want that. And so I think that's part of the mystery in the polling, that the polling didn't fall like the pundits thought. They don't understand, nor do they understand the fact that we don't want one of them, which is the bottom line.
Key difference here, Mike, is that, do you know how many times have we seen Republicans in debates where the Democrat will make an assertion about the Republican that is clearly not true, but the Republican won't verbally push back?
Right.
The one thing that was great about the last debate, Trump pushed back every time Hillary was trying to hang a sign on him, and we've not seen that in decades.
Not since Ronald Reagan said, "I paid for that microphone."
Yeah.
Have you seen anybody say, "Stop it"?
Right.
I think he would have, like we talked about in the first segment, he would have liked to have done it more and held himself back out of the concerns that maybe we're just pontificating. Who knows what really went on? But that's what I think there are fair guesses about what he was thinking. But even at that, he was willing to say stop it and banter back and forth with the host, the moderator. I thought he was obnoxious. And by the way, folks, I've liked him up until this, but he kept taking the Trump to school. That's fine. That's his job. But he never laid a kid glove on the Hildebeest. And for anyone to watch that and not pick up on those things, you have to be in the group that doesn't get it if you didn't see that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Did
you? By the way, you're probably not a Trump-publican. Are you a Trump supporter? Are you going to vote for him?
I was.
I got the deer in the headlight look for a second.
Up until the stop and frisk thing that he started coming out with last week. I'm more of I've been debating between Trump and Darrell Castle kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But
Hillary thanks you.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just math.
Yeah. But with Trump, as I said earlier, I thought he was poking her, but he did what we wanted Romney to do 4 years ago, and we wanted McCain to do 4 years before that. He
stop and frisk says you can't vote for him.
It's one of the things that I
don't want to take the Enigma down that path, but I'm always enjoy those kind of sidelines, because if you look at the New York, numbers of deaths. Hang on, the numbers of deaths that did not happen under stop and frisk. So you look for laws that help civil rights. The dead people have no more civil rights. They're dead. And if we can save life and then argue about the details, that makes a heck of a lot more sense to me than to say, "Oh my goodness, they stopped and frisked somebody." I don't have I'm a gun carrier. I own a gun shop. If they want to stop and frisk me, I don't want to be in Germany where it says "your papers, please," any more than you do. On the other hand, if I were in New York City raising my 4 daughters, I told you how dear they were to me, and now my 9 grandkids, and you had the murder rate that city had, I'd have moved.
And that would be a great choice for you to do.
Okay, but that happened to Detroit. Now Detroit is almost non-existent.
And those are Democrat policies, right? That New York is Democrat policies, Chicago Democrat policies, Detroit Democrat policies. They ruin cities.
We agree on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But for me, these are important issues. It's one of the same reason why a lot of libertarians don't support Gary Johnson, because he wants people to force people to bake the cakes. He's
aside from me, he's a
those kind
nut.
of things. So
When you do an interview and you stick your tongue out at somebody, and you say, I stopped smoking dope 6 or 7 months ago, so I'd have my head clean so I could be president. You go, really? Good for you. I mean, so he's just a nut. And by the way, I've met him. He's a nice guy, but he's like meeting someone in high school that everyone's met that's burnt her brain out. That's who I identified him as. Nice guy. I'm watching him give a talk, and I'm standing 10 feet from him in an organization I used to chair, and my view was Rome is on fire, and he's arguing over drug laws. Let's put the fire out, and then we can argue about all these nonsensical things. But listen, if I had lost one of my daughters in New York City because of an absence of stop and frisk, I'd say you've enraged my civil rights. You've killed my daughter so that somebody didn't get their feelings hurt. I think that's outrageous. But aside from that, I think the on topic of the Enigma, it's fascinating to me that they don't get it after a whole year and a half worth of campaigning. They still don't understand. What do you think, Miles?
Yeah, I mean, I find anymore that the never Trumpers are a group of people that are just looking for another reason not to vote for Trump, and they will not acknowledge that what they're basically doing is fundamentally voting for Hillary.
Absolutely. Listen, folks, we're out of time. The music's on. Brian Thomas has got the little 30-second sign coming up next. So find us on Twitter at Talk Mike Hewitt. And please, please, please join us at / The Mike Hewitt Show on Facebook, because there you can type as messages, argue with me, tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong, tell Miles how wonderful he is. Feel bad for Gina that she's stuck with Matt Wiedenhoff, and that's Ludwig von Wiedendorsky. Folks, we'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Jeff, thank you.
thanks for having me.
Miles, talk to you soon, my friend.
All righty, talk to you.
Yep, bye, folks.